The story begins a few decades after dinosaurs have been genetically reconstructed. All attempts to confine them have ended in tragedy, and now these animals are scattered around the world. Recently, Biosin Genetics obtained exclusive permission to study these animals. Since then, the rescued dinosaurs are taken to the company's sanctuary in the mountains of Italy. But there are still several dinosaurs being sold illegally and suffering abuse. Claire Deering is one of the people dedicated to combating this practice. At this moment, she is raiding an illegal breeding ground to take photos before making a report. However, Claire cannot turn her back on a sick-looking hatchling and decides to take it out of there, defying her friend Zia. The two push the heavy cage until a van surprises them. The third activist, Franklin, gets out of the vehicle, and he is not very happy to see the cargo they are about to take. An alarm starts ringing as they load the cage into the van. Claire floors it and breaks through the farm's gate. Two cars are coming right behind them, and Zia panics as they start shooting at the van. Claire swerves away from the gunfire, entering an area filled with enormous dinosaurs. The trio barely escapes, but the villains are not as lucky. Taking violent headbutts from the animals, their cars flip over. In the morning, Claire is already planning the next raid, but the other two can't take her craziness anymore. Franklin says she is acting this way to redeem herself, as her last job was as a manager at the infamous Jurassic World. Her boyfriend, Owen Grady, also worked there as a trainer. Today, he uses his incredible skills to help relocate lost dinosaurs. The couple lives in a hidden cabin in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and the main reason for this is the international fame of their adopted daughter, Maisie. The girl is a clone of Benjamin Lockwood's deceased daughter, one of the founders of the original park. Tired of the isolation, Maisie starts ignoring her parents' rules, especially when there is a chance to see dinosaurs up close. Suspecting a trip to town, Claire tries to talk to her daughter, but only manages to annoy her even more. Besides the reclusion, Maisie also suffers for being a clone, even going so far as to say she is not a real person. The second constant worry for the family is Blue, the pet velociraptor. They still do not know that she has given birth, and her hatchling is even learning to hunt. At night, Owen tries to talk to Maisie, but loses his patience and ends up making things worse. Near the cabin, a stranger lurks in a parked car. On the phone, he tells his client that besides locating the velociraptor hatchling, he has also discovered Maisie Lockwood's whereabouts. At a farm in Texas, two kids are startled by a grasshopper much larger than normal. Curiosity turns to horror as several others start appearing quickly. A horrible swarm darkens the sky as the children run inside the barn. Surrounded by the giant insects, they panic as they see some crawling through the boards. Days later, scientist Ellie Sattler arrives at the same farm to study the phenomenon that has already devastated dozens of crops in the area. She is even more intrigued to see that the neighboring farm is intact. The farmer explains that her neighbor uses biosin seeds, and the grasshoppers never attack those crops. It's almost as if they have been trained to eliminate the competition. Knowing it will be tough to fight a company of this size, Ellie decides to contact old allies for support. One of them is her ex-partner, paleontologist Alan Grant. They were together when they survived the disastrous end of the original Jurassic Park 30 years ago. Showing one of the giant insects, she tells Alan what she knows about the case. Based on the destruction rate, her projections indicate an agricultural catastrophe very soon. Ellie suspects that biosin is behind it, but she needs Alan's help to prove her theory with samples from their lab. When he asks how she plans to get in, Ellie reveals she was invited to visit the sanctuary by an old friend of theirs, Ian Malcolm. Meanwhile, in the mountain range, Maisie sees Blue's hatchling for the first time and attempts to interact. Everything goes well until the mother appears, more aggressive than usual, and Owen then needs to calm her with his special techniques. He decides to look for the nest but does not let Maisie accompany him. Displeased, the girl rides off on her bike without explanations. We see that a group of criminals is keeping an eye on her, preparing a double attack. With bait trapped in the trap, they capture the hatchling and run over Blue right after. Owen rushes to stop them but cannot arrive in time and nearly gets shot. At the same time, Maisie is cornered on the bridge leading to town. From a distance, Owen can only see the man getting rid of the girl's bike. Claire panics at the news, and the two prepare to go after their kidnapped daughter. She is scared by Blue's fury, but Owen explains that they did the same to her. The couple asks Franklin for help, who has managed to get a job at the CIA. Based on Owen's description, he identifies the dinosaur trafficker Rain Delacourt and says the agents plan to intercept him the next day in Malta. The person in charge of the operation is an ex-colleague of theirs named Barry. In Italy, Alan and Ellie are welcomed by Biosin's head of communications, Ramsey Cole. Flying over the sanctuary, the view is so amazing that the two almost forget they came to sabotage the company. A robotic voice announces that the aerial isolation system is active, and Ramsey explains that this keeps the pterosaurs at a lower altitude, preventing unpleasant encounters with aircraft. At the entrance to the sanctuary, Ellie is surprised to see Louis Dodgson in person, but the CEO is only waiting to take a photo with the famous survivors. Then Ramsey takes them to the auditorium, where Malcolm is giving a lecture. Reuniting with their friends, he justifies his position at Biosin by saying that he has 5 children. Trying to speak in code, Ellie begins to whisper about the grasshoppers, while Ramsey keeps a close eye on them. Malcolm seems indifferent, insisting on getting a coffee, but we soon see this is a maneuver. He uses the unbearable noise of the coffee machine to camouflage the conversation. Discreetly passing Ellie an access wristband, he says the grasshoppers are in Laboratory 4 of Sublevel 6. At this moment, Louis is heading to the basement, where we discover that the grasshoppers are the work of Henry Wu, the same scientist who has been making questionable decisions since the 90s. But this time, the situation is so serious that even he regrets it. Henry did not expect his grasshoppers to multiply so quickly, and now he fears becoming responsible for global hunger. He tells Louis that they need to fix this mistake, but the boss does not want to risk discovery of the connection to the company. Trying to cheer Henry up in another way, he warns that Maisie Lockwood is on her way. He arranged for the girl's transport with a woman named Soyona Santos, who is in Malta. When Maisie arrives at the meeting point, she sees the cage with the hatchling being loaded onto a plane. The pilot's name is Kayla, and she watches closely as the girl enters Santos's car. Not far from there, Owen and Claire meet Barry. He lets them listen to the operation over the radio but forbids them from participating. The three enter a kind of secret fair where all kinds of illegal activities take place, selling hatchlings, hybrid animals, and even a dinosaur fighting ring. When Claire goes to the bathroom, Kayla is also there. Recognizing the American accent, she tries to ask for information, but the other cuts off the conversation, stating that this place is not for tourists. Claire does not give up and shows a photo of her daughter, pleading for any leads. Kayla merely responds that she does not want to get involved. Then Owen warns that Delacourt is arriving to negotiate the transport of Atrociraptors with Santos. These animals have been specially conditioned for selective attack. As soon as the laser is pointed at an organic target, the animal will not stop hunting it until it is in pieces. As soon as Delacourt accepts the money, the agents give the arrest order to everyone, but the criminals do not surrender and an intense shootout begins. Seeing that Delacourt is escaping, Owen disobeys Barry and starts running after him. In the back alley, the agents topple the truck carrying the Atrociraptors, and the cages scatter. Trying to get rid of Owen, Delacourt releases the dinosaurs from the fair, not knowing he is dealing with a tamer. The fair descends into complete chaos as the two fight, and Delacourt ends up stretched out in the ring, with an animal biting each hand. He confesses that he delivered Maisie to Santos and swears he does not know where she went. Leaving a velociraptor to finish off Delacourt, Owen tells Claire to look for the woman in the white blouse. Instead of fleeing, Santos goes to her valuable merchandise and speaks to the truck driver over the radio. He can't believe it when she orders him to open all the cages. Barry is one of the agents who is right in the middle of the dinosaurs when Santos starts pointing the laser, handing out death sentences. They run desperately, and Claire chases after Santos, who also recognizes her as Maisie's mother. She defends herself with everything she sees until Claire uses a shock weapon made for dinosaurs. Santos confesses that her client is Louis and says it's too late, as the girl is already on her way to the sanctuary. Spotting an Atrociraptor, she points the laser at Claire and takes the chance to escape while the other flees from the beast through a window. The chase continues across rooftops and through neighboring buildings until she jumps onto a balcony and is left hanging. The dinosaur ends up entering through the window, confused by the disappearance of its prey. Kayla finally decides to get involved when she sees Claire falling onto the back of a pickup truck. She grabs the wheel and tells the passenger to hold on tight. Meanwhile, Owen helps Barry escape from his tormentor with a trick they often use at the park. He warns his friend the exact moment to throw his body out so the dinosaur can enter the cage. Then Claire calls him on the radio, asking him to meet her on the northern runway of the island as quickly as possible. Santos is already back, and Barry tells her to raise her hands, not realizing she is marking Owen with the laser. Two Atrociraptors obey the command simultaneously, chasing the motorcycle all over the island. In the pickup truck, the two are also in trouble. But Claire once again uses the animal's speed against it and manages to knock it down. Arriving at the airplane, she assures that Owen is on his way, and he indeed appears right after. Kayla begins to take off while he speeds up the ramp. One of the dinosaurs manages to jump as well, but the motorcycle slips and throws it into the sea. At the sanctuary, Ramsey says there are 30 minutes left until the next tour and allows the guests to explore, reminding them that one of the elevators is for staff use only. A few floors down, Maisie is almost losing patience with Henry Wu as he begins to answer all her burning questions. She discovers that Charlotte Lockwood cloned her own DNA to create her. When she found out she had a serious illness, she used a type of benign virus to cure her daughter, modifying every cell in her body at once, an unprecedented feat for science. That's why Henry wants to compare her to Blue's hatchling, which the girl has just named Beta. Generated solely from Blue, she is also a clone, but her cells were not altered afterward. Since Lewis is not listening, Henry reveals his true intentions. He wants to replicate Charlotte's feat to spread a virus that will eliminate the grasshoppers. Meanwhile, Alan and Ellie are entering Laboratory 4. Alan is not very keen on the idea of touching the insect, but he doesn't want to look foolish in front of his ex. So he grabs one of the grasshoppers while she begins to collect DNA samples. Lewis descends to speak with Henry, and Maisie seizes the opportunity to free the other prisoner. As Beta begins to wreak havoc, the grasshoppers in Laboratory 4 are also getting out of control. The two gatecrashers struggle to escape and end up bumping into Maisie. It's obvious the girl is fleeing, but she also sees that the two are up to something. The plane is arriving at the sanctuary, and Lewis prevents the landing, knowing Maisie's parents are on board. Kayla tries to pretend that the communication is failing, but the trick doesn't work. Then Lewis orders to disable the aerial isolation, and it doesn't take long before the plane is attacked by a massive pterosaur that destroys the fuselage. To make matters worse, Kayla informs that the only ejection seat is Claire's. Projected out of the plane, she sees her parachute being shredded by the flying animals right after opening. While Kayla lands as best she can, the trio of fugitives is trying to board the train before Ramsey sees them, and they are shocked when he arrives, asking about the samples. Ramsey then reveals that he has been on their side the whole time, which is why he showed them where the restricted elevators were. Helping the three board, he says the train goes straight to the runway, where a plane is already ready for takeoff. Outside, Claire is suspended by the ragged remains of the parachute when a massive head passes close to hers. It's a Therizinosaurus, whose claws can be almost a meter long. Claire frees herself from the seat at the first chance and begins to crawl toward the swamp. The dinosaur starts to follow her slowly, and its enormous claws are very close to her head when she submerges, holding her breath during the long roar. When it leaves, Claire sees the smoke from the plane crash in the distance with a broken heart. But the truth is that Kayla and Owen escaped unharmed and are in much better shape than she is. Carefully moving across the frozen lake, Kayla explains that she is helping the couple because she had seen Maisie being kidnapped and did nothing to stop it. The conversation is interrupted by a rather hefty pyroraptor. Its feet begin to crunch the surface until a fissure opens, and the animal jumps into the water. Terrified, the two swap caution for a mad sprint. Owen ends up falling into the lake, but Kayla manages to pull him out before the beast reaches him. They barely recover from the scare when the dinosaur emerges, ready to hunt. It chases the duo across the bridge to the elevator, barely missing the chance to enter as well. In the control room, Lewis is informed about something peculiar captured on the cameras: their guests fighting with a swarm of grasshoppers in the restricted lab. The security guard also says that Malcolm was filmed handing an object to Ellie, probably an access wristband. On the train, Ellie tells Maisie that she met Charlotte and always admired her as a scientist, especially for being more ethical than anyone around her. When Maisie says she is one of her mother's experiments, Ellie disagrees and states that Charlotte loved her dearly. Then the lights suddenly go out, as Lewis decided to drop them in the midst of the old amber mines. Alan lights a torch and begins searching for an exit from the tunnels, not noticing the movement of an aquatic animal. When Malcolm is called to the control room to be fired, he hears someone say that the train has stopped in the amber mines. Still unaware of Ramsey, Lewis asks him to escort the philosopher to the airport. In the valley, Owen and Kayla are looking for Claire when they witness a tense encounter between a Tyrannosaurus and the largest carnivore in the world, the Giganotosaurus. The fight is not very serious, but Kayla laments the ignorance of whoever put these two together. Ramsey shows Malcolm the map of the tunnels and explains where his friends should be, indicating the best place to find them. Down below, Alan finally finds a staircase and asks Ellie to hold the torch while he climbs. When she hands it back, the flame illuminates a massive dinosaur a palm's width from his nose. Alan loses his balance in shock and crashes to the ground. More dinosaurs begin to appear, and Ellie uses the torch to ward them off. In the first opening, the three rush to a gate but can't get it open. Malcolm arrives on the other side to save them, but he also doesn't know the password and starts trying various historical dates, to the complete despair of everyone. The beasts are almost ready to pounce when Ramsey sees the ridiculous scene on the camera. He unlocks the passage from his own keyboard, and Malcolm boasts about having guessed the password. Still alone, Claire arrives at a research station and begins lowering the access ladder. The mechanism is quite slow, and the bushes near her start to move. She approaches on tiptoe until she sees the silhouette of a Dilophosaurus, famous for its venom spit. Soon, another one emerges from the bushes behind Claire. Against the wall, she starts to shrink back in panic as she sees a third one approaching. When it opens its frills, ready to cover her with venom, Owen's hand grabs its neck, and Kayla completes the counterattack with a shock. Claire is doubly happy to have been saved and to see her boyfriend alive. Realizing it's time to dispose of the physical evidence, Lewis goes to the lab and orders all the grasshoppers to be incinerated. He enters the elevator without watching the horror show until the end, and therefore doesn't hear the alert that the camera has been compromised. The assistant's eyes widen as she sees the box emptying when the flock flies through the ceiling, traversing the internal shaft to the top of the building. Kayla is astonished by the flaming cloud in the sky, and the dinosaurs start to become agitated. The fallen grasshoppers spread fire throughout the valley and also hit the jeep, causing Malcolm to lose control. At the top of a cliff, the vehicle hangs halfway off. Maisie suggests that everyone shift their bodies in the opposite direction to balance the car. Malcolm sees that it's working and celebrates the success of teamwork until the vehicle simply drops and rolls down the slope. Upside down in the back seat, Maisie sees her parents through the window and starts shouting for them. They hear the girl's voice and rush to pull her from the wreckage. In a loving embrace, Maisie is emotional to realize that they came all the way there to save her. Then, a Giganotosaurus approaches with heavy footsteps, and everyone runs to hide. The group begins to circle the car as it advances. While the others run, Malcolm sneaks into the jeep. Then the beast notices the movement near the ladder and charges with all its ferocity as Maisie is still halfway up. It bites down on the protective grill surrounding her. Everyone panics upon seeing the girl inside the dinosaur's mouth, which continues to close as the grates bend. Her parents shout for her to keep climbing, but she is petrified with fear. She can only move when the dinosaur tears off the grate and ends up getting tangled up trying to spit her out. Kayla pulls the girl onto the platform, and the others also quickly climb up. The beast soon returns, but Malcolm decides to divert its attention with a torch. He waits for the threatening roar and then throws the torch straight into the open mouth. The dinosaur chokes and starts to spew flames like a dragon. Malcolm seizes the opportunity and joins the others, who are already entering the station. Owen and Ellie are at the end of the line when the Giganotosaurus spikes the walkway. They slide back but manage to gain enough momentum to jump the gap. As soon as Owen gets up, saying it wasn't so bad, the creature's head bursts through the glass wall. Claire gets her foot caught in a rope and begins to be pulled. Owen manages to grab her just in time, but the two are stuck, so Maisie throws a weapon to Claire, and she shocks the dinosaur in the eye. It finally gives up on them and leaves. In the control room, the staff watches the fire, and Lewis is forced to authorize the emergency protocol. The general evacuation begins to be announced as the implants are activated, bringing the animals inside. Lewis is packing his things to get out when Ramsey appears. He says everything will be fine and offers him a promotion, wanting to shift all the blame onto him. Ramsey just confesses to the sabotage and turns his back on the businessman. Returning to the control room, he finds the group of survivors trying to reactivate the aerial isolation so Kayla can get them out of there. He explains that the emergency protocol is consuming too much energy. To turn on the system, energy needs to be redistributed manually. Additionally, Owen refuses to go home without Beta. Malcolm stays in the control room with Ramsey while each goes off with a different mission. Ellie and Claire head downstairs to turn on the power, Kayla will prepare the helicopter for takeoff, and Owen will go get Beta along with Maisie and Alan. Crossing a sea of semi-dead grasshoppers, Ellie and Claire reach the terminal and follow Malcolm's confusing instructions. Lewis is on his way to the airport when they manage to redirect the energy use, causing the train to stop. Meanwhile, Owen locates Beta, and Alan is left speechless when Maisie assumes the tamer's position. Imitating her pose, the other two step aside, surrounding Beta until Owen shoots a dart into her neck. In the basement, a voice awakens the grasshoppers, announcing that the primary system will restart. While Claire and Ellie struggle with the insects, Malcolm says this is the wrong system and they need to turn it off. Ignoring the complicated instructions, the two smash the system off, and Malcolm manages to activate the aerial isolation. On the train, Lewis tries to exit the carriage but is forced to run back when the Dilophosaurs appear. That doesn't protect him, as the pack decides to board as well, spraying venom into the billionaire's face. When Kayla arrives at the helicopter, everyone is back in the control room and is shocked by the arrival of Henry Wu. Confessing everything, he explains that he can still reverse the catastrophe of the grasshoppers and asks to join them. No one trusts the scientist, but Maisie accepts his request, saying Charlotte would have agreed. Kayla says she will go get them in the yard, and Ramsey warns that the dinosaurs have been gathered right there. As soon as the helicopter lands, everyone starts to hear the distinctive footsteps of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. As it emerges, the Giganotosaurus also arrives from the opposite side, and the group squeezes in between the colossal legs. Then they realize they're just getting in the way of the fight and start running as the two attack each other. Some end up trapped right under the fallen Tyrannosaurus and are almost crushed. It is then that another predator arrives in the yard, the Therizinosaurus. This diverts the others' attention, clearing the path. Everyone boards the helicopter as the fight continues. The Tyrannosaurus rears up, bites the neck of the Giganotosaurus, and drags it to shove it into the other's claws, reclaiming its title as the super predator. Back in civilization, Ramsey testifies against Bison, Henry manages to eliminate the plague of grasshoppers, and Owen fulfills his promise, returning Beta to her mother. Thus, we reach the end of this film. Thanks for watching. You can like this video to support us. Don't forget to subscribe for more content. See you in the next video. Goodbye.